refreshment?
I would love to.
We'll go ahead and get
I
some
would like to, could I start? Force
what?
Awakens.
Let's wait till we get our refreshments.
Okay, that's true. I want to have the first, the first talking point about this. It's really brief and it's kind of tangible, but I think it'll have us start out in a good place before we move into a more critical aspect. I think.
Well, I can only go to critical aspects.
I think going that way will result in us being less acidic.
Okay.
So.
Well, right. I think this has already been us Well, we've been pretty positive so far. I think.
Yeah.
For the most part, we've been pretty positive. And this will be the intermission before we go into. Well, friends.
Okay, so this is J.J. Abrams. Not as much lens flares.
Well,
quasi fuckpad movie.
Well, I think the
Force
Vidiot's talked about this is that J.J. Abrams is someone who religiously listens to criticism, and he was just constantly getting criticized and made fun of for the lens flare. So I get the feeling that he's no, I'm just not going to do it this time. I'm just not going to do it. There's going to be one or two here and there, but I'm not going to do it.
That was a good thing. So
I actually kind of missed the lens flares.
So I saw this last night, and this is the first time I saw it since seeing it with family since Christmas 2 years ago. So
right.
It's been a very long time since I've seen this movie.
Uh-huh.
And I remember liking it back then, because it's oh, this is the first Star Wars movie I've seen in theaters.
Yeah.
This is, I never thought this would happen. Unfortunately, it's Disney. We'll get to that. But I never thought this would happen. And then I just sort of left this movie and going, you know what my favorite part about this movie was? Fucking pan flute score. The pan flute score. I love that.
Okay.
And that's not the only thing I really liked about this, but...
Well, to kind of put on that, I think I have the same opinion of it now that I did when it was in theaters.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Well, okay, so I saw this movie, I think watching it this time was the 6th time I'd seen the movie. Oh, wow. I saw it 3 times in theaters, and then I think I watched it twice on home video.
Okay.
So, this was the 6th time. And, I mean, Reed, what you're describing, that's every J.J. Abrams movie,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. J.J. Abrams movies are movies that you watch as you're watching them, you're having a good time. It's propulsive. It's, zooming.
Super kinetic,
zooming from one thing to the other. And then, once you walk out of the theater, you're kind of You just forget about it.
Oh, wait, that was nonsense.
And you start identifying...
I was actually texting you, John, because I saw that movie just a couple hours before, and then I'm going, wait, what happened in this movie exactly?
You start identifying the reasons it doesn't work, and then you start to be okay, maybe that wasn't as good as I thought. And this movie was it feels like it was designed in a lab to be... the polar opposite of everything everyone didn't like about the prequels. Yeah. It was designed to be viewed in the theater after not having seen a good Star Wars movie for a very, very long time. And, reminding you of all the reasons you fell in love with Star Wars in the first place.
Action. Oh, wait. Charming actors?
Oh, wait.
What?
Fun. Oh, wait. Practical effects. Yeah. Oh, wait. Cool designs.
Oh, wait. Some jokes?
Yeah.
Well, actually, all the new designs are awful, but we'll get to that.
I don't think that's quite true.
I think
look, man, those abomination tentacle things in
okay, those are terrible. Those are terrible.
Those are
Anyway, okay, so this movie, once you separate it from all that,
there's nothing.
There's almost nothing.
Okay.
I do think the first, half hour-ish is a very fun... They throw you right in.
Yes.
You're these are brand new people, the stormtroopers, all that stuff is interesting.
Oh, that is so fascinating.
There's a lot of, kind of interesting, ideas that pop up in there. Yeah. All the stuff on Jakku, I think, works pretty well. Mm-hmm. Although, God, you have this thing that J.J. Abrams does, where, I don't understand. He does this thing where he's it's almost like he's dodging copyright even though he doesn't have to. I swear to God. It's he's okay, so this planet is going to be, it's basically Tatooine, but no, it's Jakku. It's not Tatooine, it's Jakku.
It should have been Tatooine.
It is, it's Tatooine, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's Jakku.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so stupid.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
profoundly
It's like,
stupid.
come
It's like,
on.
dude, you could have just made this Tatooine.
Just
no
blow-
one would have complained.
Just blow your load. It's okay.
I honestly think that would have been totally fine. I honestly don't think anyone would have had a
no one would
problem
have
with
cared.
that.
No
one would have cared.
You're already like trying to tie this thing so much to other like iconography already that no one would have noticed.
Yeah, but
People would probably like that a bit more.
Yeah.
Probably.
but all that stuff, like, and them flying the Millennium Falcon, like, it's kind of a like forced moment of fan service when like you go like
moment's awful.
they just turn and it's like the Millennium Falcon is there, but yeah, okay, that doesn't really work
That's
in terms of
awful.
like movie logic, but
No.
it works fine for me.
They
It's
like
a
have
very-
like this big like woo
It's a really
shot of the Falcon.
I know,
Yeah.
but I'll forgive that.
I guess I will too.
If that had been the only moment like this in the movie, it would have been forgivable.
Yes,
I think.
yes, I can agree with that.
And then that sequence of them like flying the Falcon and fighting off the fighters, that's really cool.
That is
It's
cool.
fun. It's like space action that we've
Mhm.
never quite seen before.
I mean, let's put it
Except-
this
well,
way:
well,
J.J. Abrams can do Star Wars iconography. He can take all this nonsense, put like a whipping camera on it, and
Yeah.
make it look cool. And
Well-
that's pretty much all I get out of the first 30 minutes. It's like, wow, this is kind of interesting technically. Wow, this is like a kineticism we haven't really seen out of this franchise. Wow, this
Yeah.
is interesting.
For a very long
Then
time,
the
yeah.
plot hits.
well, okay.
Well, maybe, yes. But, like, the one thing that, like, so, like, I think starting with that, you know, Rey, who we're introduced to, is, like, a scavenger who basically lives her life off of portions.
Yes,
from
sold off by her family.
From spare parts, you know, lives by this, makes tallies, and then flies the Millennium Falcon like a fucking pro. Like, bullshit!
Okay, let's be like I don't like to use this term because it has like a lot of like gender like connotations,
Mary
but like
Sue.
the Mary Sue, because like the entire story is hollowed out for the like Rey is so cool and Rey knows how to do anything and Rey is the new Jedi. And like everything is just, like there's so many moments of like there's like Han Solo
We'll get to that.
Okay.
I want to kind
Okay.
of take this beat by beat.
okay I can
So
understand.
we start off with all this with like just this like they throw you right into this thing. It's like, okay, it's like basically kind of the same dynamics as we remember, but like we have this stormtrooper that's really cool and like it's just super enthusiastic, all that stuff. All right. Then you have like three things like right one after the other that just like basically, if you want to pinpoint like when the movie goes off the rails, you could like point to any one of these things.
Yes.
Probably, yes.
First one, Supreme Leader Snoke.
Yes.
Yep.
He comes in, you're like, what? Huh? Who the fuck is this guy? Like, why is he here?
Why do we need another emperor?
Why do we need him? Like, why is he even in the movie? Like, the Emperor
Why
wasn't
is he
even...
why is he so dick attached to like destroying the Jedi?
Like, I don't know. And my friend like pointed this out when we were watching this movie. Is like, he doesn't need to be here.
No.
Like,
No.
you couldn't have like not had him in the movie at all, and it honestly would make no difference. He has nothing to do with anything, and he's terrible.
Well, yeah, certainly. The design's awful. Is like the giant like hologram of him just looks terrible.
Yeah.
And like there's no reason to have like a higher chain of command. Well, here's the thing about it. Like J.J. Abrams is only good at insinuating scale and insinuating what might come, which is why I think like the first 30 minutes of this movie,
you know, if you're making a Star Wars movie, is all you really need, right?
Yeah.
It's all you should need.
Yeah. But, like, here's the thing. He doesn't understand that, like, oh, wait, characters pay off. Like, all he has is, like, making scale. Like, the first 30 minutes feel huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realize, like, oh, wait, this is what the movie's about.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then, okay, so then moment number 2 is the arrival of Han Solo.
Yes.
Yes.
And now, Tony Zhao, formerly of Every Frame of Painting, pointed out in an essay that he wrote, so because I want to give him full credit for this because this was not my thinking.
Okay.
This movie is like split, like right down the middle in terms of what it is doing, because it is both trying to like tell a story about these new characters and also having to do the work of closing Han Solo's arc from Return that was not done in Return of the Jedi.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, obviously that's already a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do think there maybe could have been a way to do that worked a little better. Like, maybe if you intercut with Han Solo, like, from the beginning of the movie, maybe that could have been like, okay, this movie's about him too. Like, when he arrives, the movie shifts gears so fast.
The movie grinds to a halt.
And that sequence with the tentacle monsters,
awful.
Horrible.
Oh,
like,
awful.
that is a classic J.J. Abrams, like, we gotta make this scene an action scene for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, and the design of those creatures, I completely agree with you, it's not good.
It looks like something like the early 2000s. It's great. Well, here's the thing about it, is, like, I talk about this, like, there's, like, the interesting thread in this movie that, like, people really aren't sure if, like, Luke Skywalker and, like, Star Wars actually happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think, like, what you just should have done is, and they would never have done this because of just, like, the nature of, like, this machine, is that what you just needed to make, like, okay, these are all myths.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
These are all just things that, like, we'll reference, they're in the canon, we talk about them, but we never see a Han Solo, we never see a Princess Leia, we never see a Luke Skywalker.
Interesting.
And, like, we just make it where it's about, like, these myths are here, and we like, mythologize them.
That actually is, like, you bring this up, that's interesting. This is, like, my favorite idea in the movie.
Yes, it's mine too.
Like, that these new characters, like, treat the characters and the events of the original as, like, mythology, as, like, these, like, figures of legend.
Yes.
Like, Rey talks about Luke Skywalker in hushed tones, like, Luke Skywalker, I thought he was a myth. Like,
Han Solo!
I love that!
Yeah.
That's a super compelling idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily, like, totally agree with you. I think, like, yes, it probably would have been more interesting to do it that way. I think you could still have the original people in it and make it work.
There's a possibility.
Yeah.
Like, my personal thing would just be, like, all legend, and you just laser focus it on, like, what's actually important here, which is, like, which like, should be, like, Rey and Finn.
Yeah,
and,
no,
like,
I do agree with that.
Yeah, Rey, Finn, and then what they do.
And Poe Dameron, who is, like...
Who is not a character in this movie, really.
Yeah, and,
like, can I just say...
Oscar Isaac tries to will a character out of him, but there's just nothing there.
Can I just say, at the end of Last Jedi, when Oscar Isaac and Daisy Ridley, like, share the screen for the first time,
it's so weird.
You realize, like, oh yeah! They haven't met before.
They haven't.
What?
Well, like,
did you forget about that?
They've never met.
Do you not remember that they shake hands at the end of the movie? And he's like, Poe Dameron, I'm Rey. It's like,
I thought that was sarcasm.
No.
Oh my god.
And you're kind of like, what the fuck? Like, what was that?
Well, like,
it takes 2 whole goddamn movies for them to get the central trio all together.
Poe Dameron is one of the first goddamn things we see out of this new trilogy.
What was in between the movies? Shouldn't they have at least met?
No, because Rey was on fucking Skywalker planet the whole time.
Well, I also think this is an issue, is that, like, this is like a movie of performances. Daisy Ridley, is it John Boyega? Boyega. Okay.
He's good.
John Boyega, really charismatic, really compelling actors.
They're all great.
Their characters are nonsense.
Oh, yes.
Utter nonsense.
Well, and I think a lot of people said this in the lead up. Like, people would always say that, like, how good Force Awakens ultimately is would depend on Episode 8.
Which isn't true, but I'll go with this.
It's not quite true, but...
I don't know if after going back through Episode 7, I'm not sure I agree with that either.
Okay, well, let me say this. That's not the way it should be.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
But, and, like, after seeing The Last Jedi, like, Force Awakens is terrible. Like, it just throws all of Force Awakens' flaws into sharp relief.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you realize that these characters are nonsense. There's, like, nothing here to work with.
They are performances, and, like, we kind of like those performances, but, like,
I really want to like these characters.
You want to, because, like, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega,
they're all
fascinating, wonderful performers.
Especially considering that, like, you know, most of the focal point in this movie is, hey, care for this person, Rey, do it.
And you watch this movie, and with Finn especially, like, he is so inconsistently written. Like, he makes no sense, like, from scene to scene. Like, John Boyega's, like, really doing his best to sell it. But, like, and then this is the third major point that I'm getting to. That whole fucking Maz Kanata, fake Mos Eisley, that sequence is horrendous.
That killed the movie.
It destroys the entire movie. Like, everything after that, is like nothing.
Is not. Oh yeah, it was actually we've been talking about kinetic action. Like the action in that scene is terrible.
Oh yeah, no, because they grind it to a complete stop. Yeah, they just it's like they spend 20 minutes there, just I don't know what's going on.
All the dialogue there is horrible.
Like Ray has some.
Enter.
Oh my god!
Ray has some nonsense flashback.
Okay, my roommate pointed this out when we were watching it. That whole nightmare sequence is on the level of the nightmare in Batman v Superman. It's terrible.
Yeah, you're right.
It's terrible. And God, I just honestly everything after that is okay, so we're closing Han Solo's arc in a way that I do kind of like.
It's admirable to say that, hey, we have a character who doesn't really have resolution. Let's resolve him using new mythology.
Sure, and Kylo Ren is, I think, the most interesting part of this whole new Enterprise. He is the closest thing to a real character.
Yes,
and
also Adam Driver, great actor.
Adam Driver is great.
Oh
Adam Driver's, and there's also something to be lended here. It's this is. I think this is what nerds who worship Return of the Jedi and things like that think Darth Vader actually was really conflicted, complex.
Yeah,
but that's not what Darth Vader actually was.
Oh no. Darth Vader is one of the greatest screen villains of all time, and he works as a figure of pure villainy. And then in Return of the Jedi, they neuter him basically.
Yeah,
but in here, that conflict is not only interesting, it's scary.
Right.
Because, he is just, the anger in him is just, I think there's a problem that, they play it off as a joke a lot of the time, which is, but, that is, just really interesting. This is someone who just is barely keeping it together and just, uses the mask as, a real facade, as, to hide that.
Right. Yeah. And then you just, hit the point in this movie where it's just oh, it's another Death Star, but it's bigger.
That's so bad.
It's even more stupid.
And can I just say, stupid. I feel so bad for Donald Gleason. That, scene where he's giving his, fake Nazi, fascist speech on the planet. Oh my god. I just burst out laughing this time.
It's so awful.
It's horrible.
It's so awful.
I love Donald Gleason. He's a great actor. And he's done lots of good stuff.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
I don't think... Well... They don't give him anything. Yeah. What is he supposed to do?
He doesn't know what he's doing because there's nothing to work with.
Yeah, right. And that's just all just not good. And the final battle is it's all what are they doing? What are they gunning for? What is happening?
It's just fan service for A New Hope.
Yeah, and also I'm gonna say this.
One good moment and within all that nonsense climax is that moment of Rey picking up the lightsaber with the Force, when you and this is another thing that worked much better when you were seeing the movie for the first time.
Yeah.
But because all the advertising had been John Boyega with the lightsaber and all that stuff. Having her take up that mantle is a triumphant moment that I think really does work.
Yeah, I think that final action scene with them in the woods is actually really compelling.
That's
really
pretty good. It's pretty good.
I was what do you guys think of the nonsense killing of Han Solo?
Well, what with Kylo Ren?
With Kylo Ren just being in there, and the movie tries to say hey, right, okay, whereas they say oh, maybe Kylo Ren is a human and maybe he might join and that sort of nonsense.
I do like all that in theory.
Yes.
In practice, it's so strange because you get to the point where you realize this is the first scene they've been in together.
Yeah.
They've talked about a lot of this stuff for the whole movie, but they haven't shown
really
us
awkward, clunky ways.
Yeah, but they haven't shown us any of what their relationship was.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a sense of what's been lost here. You don't get a sense of why this matters.
And Last Jedi does nothing to illuminate that.
Yeah. I would argue that's a point in Last Jedi's favor.
Well, yes.
But I just everything I like about that, I like in theory. I
think that seems terrible. Okay. I think it's just utterly terrible. I think neither of them know acting wise. Neither of them know really what to do because they haven't had the time they don't have chemistry. They don't have anything to do. So just kind of awkwardly looking at each other. We as an audience really don't know what to do because there's nothing there to begin with.
Again, I think I like what it represents. The actual
execution. I like what it represents too, but just in execution is just awful. Though I do really love Chewie's Han is dead rampage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is like pure like fan service.
I did see something. It was like a little comic that somebody drew of like what Chewie is seeing in that moment. You get the feeling like Chewie must have been like Uncle Chewie to him, right? Like he saw this kid like grow up. Like he probably like held him when he was a baby. Like that's all really interesting. Like what is that like? I don't know. Like J.J. Abrams doesn't have the fucking time for that.
That'd be interesting. We can't have that.
Anyway.
So Reed, what did you want to say?
So speaking of senseless killing.
Yes, I wanted to get to this.
How about that First Order? So
I wanted to get to this.
So the First Order seems like another empire, except for a slight difference. So in A New Hope, an Empire squadron goes down and then surveys amongst, the people, stops people, and then asks where the droids are, and then realized those were the droids that they were looking for. In The Empire Strikes Back, they obviously, sneak attack on Cloud City, and they just occupy it.
Yeah.
No harm, no foul. Within, 5 minutes of this, they kill an entire... the First Order kills an entire village.
I mean, I want to get to this, because, I have a kind of slightly different point, but, in the original trilogy, in Empire, there was a great clarity of, okay, the Empire's bad because they're super violent, and Darth Vader's always choking people, whereas, Jedi are all about, patience and care and that sort of thing. That's, a really clear dilemma. Whereas in, the Rebels in the new movies are really fucking violent. And really just headstrong, and really in practical, Poe Dameron is just, such, especially, we'll get into this more with Last Jedi, I mean, he's just, such headstrong, dick-waggling, let's just shoot them all.
This is another problem that you get into, where it's, J.J. Abrams, does not do the homework of, laying out, why you should care about any of this, and, what the dynamics are. In the opening crawl, I mean, it works in the original Star Wars because they set it up where it's okay, this is an oppressive regime, all the Nazi imagery and everything, and it's the rebellion is fighting for hope and fighting against them, and they have a device that can destroy an entire planet. Obviously the rebels don't have that. Princess Leia's always talking about Alderaan is peaceful, we have no weapons. Okay, I get it. You don't really need to do too much work with that because they lay out the dynamics so clearly.
And especially the iconographies. Because, in the new ones, they double down on the Nazi imagery, but they don't ever lay out, why do we like the Resistance?
Well, okay, but here's the thing. Because in the new ones, they're oh yeah, the First Order rose from the ashes of the Empire.
Yeah.
You're okay, but
they're more genocidal.
But, who are they?
Yeah.
Where did they come from?
Why does this universe keep building death empires? I need to know.
Why are they doing this? What? Because they don't build the dynamic. The dynamics are just not clear.
Yeah.
And that is a big problem. And so then when you see the Resistance fighting them in this way, you're I mean, okay, and I did see the First Order destroy 7 planets in the classic J.J. Abrams fashion of cut to someone you've never seen before and watch them die. It's so weird that that's a move of his. But does this make sense? I recognize that to the layman it might seem this is the exact same thing, but it's not, because it just codes so differently.
You're right, because
this gets into the nuances of writing and filmmaking where what seems like a small change has huge ramifications.
Yeah, I completely agree, which is why the Resistance is kind of fascistic in this.
Well,
what they don't care about. They don't talk about democracy or they just kind of vague, hopey, changey nonsense. Leia is dictator and especially we'll get into this more Last Jedi.
John, I don't know if you know this, but rebellions are built on hope.
Ooh, well, are they now? Are they now?
Which is the only reference to Rogue One I want in this podcast.
Anyway, but I kind of want to get to Last Jedi. What are our final thoughts on The Force Awakens?
Why is there a Resistance when there's also a coinciding Republic?
That again makes no sense.
Makes no sense.
Yeah,
and then also since the First Order uses bullshit to destroy the Republic, I feel like they won well before the Last Jedi begins. So there's almost no point in having that movie.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to be said about, like, I'm watching this and I'm just like, like, all the legwork you would have to do to establish these things, they just don't care about. They just want to get right back to the imagery of Nazi Germany, French resistance. Let's get back to that because that's what people like.
Uh-huh.
They just are not interested in any of the legwork we're describing here.
Yeah, and, like, J.J. Abrams, like, I don't know, man. Like, I like his visuals. When they're when they're good, like sometimes they're not. Like
there are some great shots.
There are some great shots in this. Like he is very good. Like I would love to see. I think Jared Francis talked about this. Like we have not seen Unbound Abrams.
Yeah,
and I would love to know what that looks like.
I think he described like a movie where like we're just constantly coming into the last 10 minutes of stuff. And it's like cigarettes and coffee.
I think that would be super interesting.
I'd fucking love that.
I think that like J.J. Abrams, if he were not so fucking tied to nostalgia and to okay, well, I didn't really talk about this. My roommate and I did like a full-on like JFK style historical like breakdown of the development of the reboot.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can really pinpoint that like the point where nostalgia enters the franchise reboot is when J.J. Abrams made his Star Trek movie. Mm-hmm. He made that movie. He carried it even further with Into Darkness. And like he and Disney were like a match made in heaven as far as that were concerned because Disney has like the exact same thing of like just repackaging something you've already seen and making it shiny.
Yeah,
and
make
new.
It shiny, polish it.
Yeah, and make it faster, more intense.
Make it bigger, more bigger.
Bigger is better. Fill it with more CGI.
Yeah,
and just like I don't know, man. Like J.J. Abrams like has like when he created the nostalgic reboot, he like ruined everything.
J.J. Abrams has no ideology.
Yeah.
Like, even, like, some, like, real... Like, George Lucas, as incompetent as he can be, has an ideology.
Oh, yeah.
He has a filmic voice.
Well,
J.J. Abrams only has
This is the thing. Like, these new movies have made me wrestle with, like, the prequels, like, say what you will.
They're about something?
They weren't corporate products. They were one guy making the movies he wanted to make, saying what he wanted to say, doing what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that, like, carried it, like, way too far in the opposite direction, obviously.
Well, because, like, all those people didn't know what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. But at least it was something.
Yeah, because I think we're just coming down to, like, this is, like, it's not even, like, diet, like, caffeine-free Coke, where, like, you can, like, drink it and just, like, throw it away. You were constantly striving, like, what am I watching?
Well, because it so often flirts with being interesting, and then tamps those instincts down immediately.
Yes.
Like, and that is just like Star Wars is a property now, and like Star Wars, like I told you this, it has been commercialized like since the beginning, and that has hurt the movies. But now Star Wars is a corporate product controlled by a heartless, soulless corporation
that is literally buying everything.
Buying everything. They have now bought the company that they bought Star Wars from in the first place.
Yeah.
So, man, I just don't know.
It's just really hard to have any like considerable knowledge about it as far as like I really this was not a fun watch.
Force Awakens?
This was not a fun
Oh, no.
watch.
Like, after the first, like, 45 minutes, like, I was kind of like, wow, that was just, like, nothing at all.
That was, like, and,
wow, I gained nothing.
And I'm just kind of baffled by, like, people are taken in by it. And people like it.
It's so strange.
So, guys, are we ready to talk about...
All right. Let's talk about The Last Jedi.
I want to start out again by saying something I like. This is the only thing I like about this. So... Is it like 40 minutes from the end? No, this is like 30 minutes, like 35 minutes from the end of the movie.
Was this after I like got up to use the restroom in Fury?
I don't know, but this was zero. This is what we call zero to Japanese anime.
Oh my god.
There is a worthless character in this movie that decides to do something rather dumb. Decides to take a rebel cruiser, turn it around, and then just go for the Star Destroyer.
Which feels like something that they should have done a lot earlier.
Yeah.
If it was this effective.
But it was a suicide mission.
It was a suicide, but like, it was already a suicide mission.
And then went light speed, cuts to black, cuts back up and what's called the silent cut, and then you see the Star Destroyer in silent, and you see a beam of light go back to screen, and John and I were laughing her
Yeah.
asses off because it looks
Which is
so
that.
bad.
Well, that is like some of like the like only
it
like.
looks good, but it's
That is some of like the only unique imagery that happens to be in this movie, and I will cherish that.
I love that. That is
That's
a brilliant visual idea.
Yeah.
And it ties into the universe perfectly. I loved that.
That's fine.
It wasn't as best utilized, but again, that might be probably the best imagery I've seen of Star Wars, especially of the new movies. I'm not sure about the old ones.
But I'm gonna say this as far as like
That's also not saying much.
because I think we're getting to Last Jedi is just a little bit more fulfilling.
Well, Last Jedi is,
I don't know.
you know, it's a movie.
But but I also think that like J.J. Abrams is way better at like chaotic, kinetic nonsense than Rian Johnson is, and it's also like
that may be true,
and it's also like 20 minutes shorter.
Okay, well, let me get into this. So this is interesting because we're recording this at the tail end of opening weekend for this movie.
Yeah.
And there has been a lot of chatter online about this movie, as there was
as like there always is.
And surprisingly, like a lot of it is coming from it got like good reviews as every
because it's a
fucking
Disney
property does somehow. Like fans have really not been liking this movie.
Well, for what reasons are they not liking it? Or has it just been like fanboy spittle? And,
well,
like,
I think it's mainly been that. I haven't read too many of them because like a couple that like people are saying like, oh, it's an assault on Star Wars' mythology. It's completely inconsistent. And like there was one that I saw where it was just like they build up strong female characters at the expense of the male characters, which is just the worst kind of criticism. Like whoever said that, just go fuck yourself. Quite frankly, like I have no time for people like you.
Yeah.
And okay, but here's what's interesting. There have been a couple people, notably Film Crit Hulk, who I sent you his kind of breakdown of this movie.
Yes.
The people that are praising this movie, a lot of them seem to be praising it for the same reasons that like we really liked Guardians 2. Which is that Rian Johnson took like a bunch of risks like narratively and with the characters, and like he did like a big departure from like the last movie and like what people were expecting, and he tried stuff, and even if it may not have all worked, like that deserves to be celebrated, although a lot of people seem to be thinking that it did work. Now, I do appreciate that. There are a lot of things in this movie, actually, that I did really appreciate.
They
I found
burn the Jedi texts.
There's stuff that I found very interesting.
Interesting and way that I'm like, fuck you.
We'll get to that later.
There's a lot of ideas here that I found really compelling that get into a lot of interesting stuff about like the mythology of Star Wars.
And there's some like stuff in here that has not been analyzed about Star Wars before.
Right.
Yes.
There's a lot of cool new ideas in here, like that sequence where like Rey is kind of reaching out to the Force, and like you see that kind of Terrence Malick like montage.
And it's kind of like, and she looks at herself in the mirror, and like we have no idea what to think about that.
Yeah.
Other than like it's kind of fuck you to like, oh, you wanted to know who Rey's parents are.
All that stuff's really interesting. But I'm just gonna say like a lot of these risks, they do not pay off.
Oh, they're nonsense.
And
it's still all nonsense.
And like I really did feel watching this movie that like it is a movie at war with itself. Like he is. I think there is I think a much more interesting, compelling, like dark, weird movie buried somewhere in here that is fighting with the Disney blockbuster that it is required to be. And it's also just it's way too long.
Oh,
and
fuck me. The climax feels... The
climax,
I think, is a literal hour.
It is. Yeah. Like, there is a literal hour of climax in this movie. And that is just, like, why? No. And
stop.
The whole, like...
Please, I want to stop.
I
want to rest.
The whole Canto Bite casino sequence is just
a
meaningless, pointless detour. And there's just... Oh, my God.
Here's the thing about it. I think just, like, for, like, what ideas we were talking about, like, altogether, I think it's still just as much nonsense as The Force Awakens. I think, like, what ideas are there are just immediately buried and immediately tossed aside for, like, all the same problems we're talking about in The Force Awakens. Well, I don't even think it's, like, what risks there are calculated right after they are taken. And, like, I just do not believe, like, this is a risk in any real tangible way. At least, not in any sort of way that, like, Guardians 2 of all things was.
Well, it's interesting because like I do think this movie like did try a lot of like new things. There were a lot of like cool ideas that he did. Like this movie is not nearly as much of a carbon copy of Empire Strikes Back.
Like there are ideas.
Yeah. There's new things. It is a new kind of story. Like the beats that they repeat from Empire are beats that they kind of like. Star Wars has always been about like kind of repeating ripples and repeating beats and things like that. That's just kind of
father's father,
right? Wired into its DNA. So I can't really fault it too much for that. But just like, and I want to be clear here, I am not faulting this movie for taking risks. I'm not faulting this movie for like breaking from some idea of what we think Star Wars should be. Those are like the best parts of this movie are when like it has like an original thought every once in a while and says like, oh wait, dark side, what? But the problem is a lot of like the things that he tries to do. Some of them just don't work, and they're just not good ideas. Like the casino thing is just nonsense. Oh yeah, and bad. Just not good. And then the other thing is that a lot of this movie, and I'm hesitant to like not lay the blame on the filmmaker who made the movie
and also wrote it.
Yeah, but like I do think that a lot of the flaws of this movie are at least somewhat attributable to The Force Awakens. Like,
here's the thing. When you have nothing to fucking work with, there's only so much you can do. Yeah.
If you look at Guardians, like, James Gunn did the homework in the first movie to, like, build up these characters and these personalities and make all of them unique and weird and different so that in the second movie, he could really dig into them and push them and make them deal with real things and real concerns.
And it was more problematic than the first one, but God, was it still amazing.
Like, that movie has its flaws, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But when it works, it really, really works. And the emotional dynamics of that movie are operating on a level that I haven't really seen from almost any other blockbuster this year.
Oh, yeah. I think, like, Guardians 2 is, like, the sort of... Like, the Rocket Raccoon crying... is an image I can't get out of my mind. I never thought I'd get that out of any Marvel movie.
And then the problem is, like, Rian Johnson, I really do think he's trying. Like, he is trying.
Well, yeah, there's, like, some great visuals in it. He has, like, some ideas about the dark side that, like, have not been come up with. And, like, the idea that, like, it tries to give you answers where there are none.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of the, of that weird surgeon guy from, I don't know why, from 1989 Batman, who like tries to repair Joker's face, and he's like, "You see what I have to work with here."
Okay. No, you're right. Yeah, like, he is trying to like give these characters like arcs and like trying to do interesting things with them, but he has nothing to work with.
No.
Like there is nothing there. Like, Poe Dameron, he really tries to give him a cool arc in this movie.
Nothing.
And some of that is kind of muddled because there's a really odd storytelling choice that he makes where he's like, Laura Dern is just, like, not going to tell him what the plan is for
even though
some
she
reason.
Can point out the window.
Yeah. And I just don't know. But, like...
And he's also kind of a fascist.
but like, who is Poe Dameron? Like...
A fascist.
The movie... And just... Finn... Like, there's just...
There's no...
there's no foundation to build upon.
That relationship with the repair woman Rose. Yeah. Like that kiss at the end feels so weird.
Oh, terrible. Terrible. Like in the theater, like when I saw that, I was like,
oh no, I saw you were like
no, it's horrible. Like, I mean, okay, first of all, I want nothing more than this makes me no better than the fucking Tumblr fanboys, but like I want nothing more than for Finn and Poe Dameron to get together.
Listen, hey man, they're the ones with the...
They have chemistry! Yeah. That'd be great. Let's get that. Can we please?
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah, so there's that factor. But then also just, like... I think if Finn had, like, sacrificed himself and been like, yeah, I'm doing this for the Resistance. I'm really committing to a cause now. Like, okay, that could have been cool.
That's kind of like he literally started with the First Order. That's a nice end to it.
I felt like if that actually went through, I'd be like, wow, that was actually somewhat satisfying.
That's a risk. Yeah,
like he is a very like inconsistent character with like not a lot like going on there. But like if that had happened, you would have kind of been like, well, fuck, okay, like there
are stakes, there are risks.
They did something here. But then like she saves him, and then he's like, why'd you stop me? She's like, I saved you, dummy. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, You literally just like you might have killed some people. Like what did you do that for? And then like she's like
it is like
that did not work for me.
I think like because we're talking.
Fuck you.
I think we are making this movie seem way more interesting than I think it actually is.
Well,
I think like we are talking about Guardians 2, and that movie commits to its risks.
Yeah.
Like there's the weird like Terrence Malick thing with Rey goes nowhere. The kind of,
yes, that is
the kind of conflicts
with
Luke Skywalker goes nowhere.
A lot of the ideas that they like get into in this, they do not follow through on them.
Laura Dern, like anything with Poe Dameron is just dropped and he's back to status quo. Even Kylo Ren, the most interesting part of this universe,
like you pointed this out, like the whole thing with the casino planet, like there is something interesting there because they talk about how like these people are like war profiteers, they sell weapons to the First Order.
Yeah, and like we get the sense like, oh wow, like the First Order just doesn't like will these things out of like magic.
That's something we haven't seen before in Star Wars. That's really cool.
What
kind of stuff does that open up? Oh, we're not even going to talk about it. Like
we're going to ride horses and destroy it.
So stupid. So goddamn stupid.
God, I hate that so much.
And Benicio del Toro, like, what is he doing in this movie?
Awful.
Like,
he's so awful.
I mean that both in the sense that like his character like has no impact on anything. And his performance is not good.
Nope.
And I just...
it's like... I think like sort of like come out here is like what this movie does is that like it presents like this is a new idea. I wasn't allowed to do anything with it, so I just dropped it in just there and then I moved on.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what I think Rian Johnson just writing this thing just kind of like saw like the wave of studio notes coming and said like, I'm going to just try my hardest to put what I can in here.
Well, because I read this interview with him where he was like, well, I didn't want to just write the script and drop it on their desk. I wanted to collaborate with them. I collaborated with them every step of the way. And I'm like, dude, like...
You're Rian fucking Johnson.
Probably would have been better if you had just written the script and dropped it on their desk. Like, that probably would have made a better movie.
Yeah.
And I just... Honestly, like... Listen, I'm glad he at least tried to take risks. Mm-hmm. I think I have to admire that because I think that's the best we're going to get these days. But like if you don't have the balls to see it all the way through, I don't know, man.
I also just find like this movie's like Star Wars like original characters as literal mythology as just weird and off-putting. Like I don't like what they do with Leia in this. Like Mark Hamill is really fucking trying, and this movie gets so much more out of his, like, clouded, sorry eyes
Mark Hamill,
than anything else.
Mark Hamill is great.
He is unbelievable.
I want to be very clear about
this.
He is good.
And to circle back around to something I actually did really appreciate, like, all the stuff with, like, him and his conflict with himself and with Kylo Ren, that all builds to something that is pretty interesting. And I think that is the most compelling, like, thing in the movie. There's a really weird, like, undercurrent of melancholy and conflict running under that. Yeah. That's all really interesting. I really dig that. Kylo Ren, like, just the best character.
He's like the only one who said like, wow, like we took this mythology and went to places with it.
And his relationship with Rey too, super interesting, super compelling.
I kind of love like the cosmic like force connection between them.
Now,
it's nonsense, but I think it's cool.
That's true.
But then the problem you get into is the exact same problem that you got into with Force Awakens, which is that they split their time between wrapping up Luke's arc and like Rey disappears for almost the entire climax of the movie.
Yeah.
You're like, what? Like you get to the point where like they're having the big confrontation in like Snoke's throne room, and we'll talk about Snoke in a minute. Where like she's like facing down Kylo Ren, and she's like, what? And he's like, join me. And all that stuff. That's really cool. Yeah. Like you're like, okay, like Rey, we're really gonna dig into you as a character now. Like, who are you?
You
like,
are the center of the universe.
You are the center of this movie. You are the protagonist. Nope.
Like, there's a point where like I think somebody comes up to the throne room. I think it might be like, God, I can't recall the actor. We just talked about him with Force Awakens.
Oh, Donald Gleason.
Donald Gleason. They come up and Rey's just gone. She's just gone. We have no fucking clue where she went.
Like, why?
Yeah.
I just don't understand. They put so much legwork into being like, yeah, this movie's about Rey. Like, we're going to really dig into her, and we're really going to dig into this. And, like, then to have the ultimate catharsis of the movie be about Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Listen, that kind of works on its own.
Because Mark Hamill is unbelievable.
Because Mark Hamill is great, and they really do the legwork of actually, like, I really do buy his arc in this movie. Like, I think that is the one thing about this movie that, like, totally, unabashedly works.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his whole thing of, like, why he went away from everybody, why he came to this island, why he just, like, wants to die now.
Yeah.
That all works for me, I think.
I don't know, like, what do you think of, like, the Yoda scene? Because
Okay.
I think that's like that is like one of like the like weird ideas that are in this movie about like Luke just wants the Jedi to die. He wants it all. He's kind of like the opposite of Kylo Ren, and that like they are both characters who just want to see it all burn because it destroyed them.
Yeah. Reed.
What do you think?
I think
Well, Yoda looks awful. Let's just start there.
Yeah. I think I was just holding up my.
I don't care if it's a puppet. It's a terrible puppet.
That's a terrible puppet. Yeah, I think it was.
And there's an awful like afterglow
Well,
effect.
I think the lighting on it is kind of weird, and probably the digital augmentation probably makes it look worse.
Yeah, like I think it's terrible.
Yeah, I think I was holding up my middle finger for the whole scene because it's like, where the fuck did this come?
Well, I also ended up as like Yoda is pretty much saying, "Burn the Library of Alexandria. Who cares?"
Okay. I saw something that was like, apparently, like, Rey took the books with her when she left, so they didn't actually burn the books, so, okay, fine, whatever, but
what?
I don't know. I think
there's like a final shot where like they open like a drawer and the books
I've now
are
seen the
there.
movie twice, and I didn't see that either time.
There's a final shot within the Falcon where like they open a book and they open a drawer and they're all there.
Oh, okay.
I
didn't notice that.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
that's mea culpa then.
At first I was like, wait a minute, are those the books?
Okay. The Yoda scene, I know it's weird and it's fan servicey, but I do think it kind of works. I mean, like, Luke as a character is always someone who has, like, needed guidance. And,
and we see that, like, him trying to guide people has been disastrous.
Right. Yeah. And so to have that dynamic come back into the movie, that kind of works for me.
Yeah.
It is kind of weird, and I'm kind of like, okay, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, like,
certainly I don't have a huge problem with it.
I think my general issue is like I really like the idea of that scene. I really love the idea of like. Yeah. Guidance figure comes back.
That's a neat idea.
Someone who was just like, because Luke, in theory, is a super interesting character in this.
Sure.
Yes.
And there's just so much you can do with him. But again, that scene's nonsense. There's nothing to say there. They just let bullshit lightning comes down. It ends. We move on. There was nothing in that scene worth a salt. Because like everything else, there's a risk, there's an idea, and then they immediately bury it.
I mean, they do bury it, but they bring it to light, and I don't think that they really touch on that until the very end. But then by that point,
and I think it's also like the Force has never been more nonsensical.
It's just I don't know. I think that first of all, you don't want to try to explain the Force because George Lucas tried and it was terrible. Well, I mean, like when like the Force doesn't make sense. Like I don't know what it's supposed to be as like a thematic thing. Okay, well that's maybe fair. I don't know. Honestly, I kind of just don't know how to feel about the Yoda scene. Like, I was watching it, and I was just kind of like, okay. I don't know. I honestly, that is like the one part of the movie where I watched it, and I was kind of like, I have nothing to say.
Well, I think that's the thing about it. Like, that's like I think that is like the metaphor for this movie for me, which is like, interesting idea buried, and just no ideology to it, nothing to work with, dead.
Okay. So just one last thing. Well, maybe a few last things.
We have a lot. We are exhausted, but we are still fighting on in the final rounds. We want to kill this dragon.
One other thing that I did like unabashedly love about this movie was Rian Johnson's commitment to smashing the mystery box.
Okay.
Completely agree.
Like when you get the big reveal in this movie where Kylo Ren like goes like, "I know who your parents are," and Rey just like, "Say it." Rey just goes, "They were nobody." He's like, "Yeah, they were like junk traders. They sold you for drinking money."
Yeah.
Like, I like completely, sincerely, like I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like we are this character now. We are realizing like she is not tied into anything.
She is just here.
Yeah.
She's just here. She's a regular person. Great. Like honestly, that is incredible.
Yes.
In this franchise, which has always been about like this one family,
Skywalker,
focusing on these like special people.
I mean, I don't quite agree that it's still not about them in this, but
that's.
But like, I agree. Like, Rey is just a nobody who has the Force.
Right.
That's all we need.
Love it. Love it. I think it would have been better if they'd gotten that out of the way, like, in the first half hour. Like, if that had been, like, an end of the first act reveal...
That would have been really neat.
That would have been really cool.
That would have...
Like, my biggest hope...
That might be interesting.
My biggest hope for this movie going in was that, like, Rian Johnson would just, like, get all the reveals out of the way, like, immediately.
Yeah.
Which he didn't, but the way he did it, like, still kind of worked for me. Just because... And also, like, with Snoke, again...
I read the film critical.
This shows you that, like... this movie just proves that, like, Snoke is terrible and should never have been in these movies at all.
Also,
sorry.
I'll tag on.
Okay. But I just have to say, like, I admire Rian Johnson's commitment to being like, oh, you thought Snoke was important? Like, no.
Fuck you!
Like, fuck you! Like, yeah. Like,
we just cut him in half, and there's like a comedic joke where his legs fall down.
They slice him in half. He is never explained. And I'm kind of like, well... You know, did we really need to explain him?
No.
Like, well, like...
Who cares?
No, because he didn't even need to be here in the first place. Yeah. So, again, I think that just reflects even more poorly on The Force Awakens.
Yeah, though I think, the much better way to do that would be to try and actually make him interesting, but just killing him is fine by me.
Here's my thing. Like, yes, it would have been a more effective story choice to be like, well, okay, JJ got me into this, so now I have to try to explain him.
Yeah.
But... Again, I do kind of admire that his approach was just like, oh, JJ got me into this, but I don't want to deal with this, so I'm just going to get rid of him. Yeah. I do kind of like that.
Okay.
So that's all whatever.
So like, what we like about this movie is Rian Johnson trying and failing to tear down what J.J. Abrams built.
I mean, yeah. Like that's... I admire that. And... You know,
I think that is some of, like, the finest example of damning with fine praise we have ever had on this show.
Well, look, honestly, like, there's a... If this movie had just been done better, I think I would love it.
I mean, like, if an editor came in and said 2 hours, done.
And also, like, I think I told you about this. Like, someone needed to... do the old Godfather Part 2 with this movie and cut down the intercutting by, like, a factor of 2. Yeah. And also, like, cut down on the runtime, slice all the extraneous shit. Like...
How long is this climax? A rose and then get rid of that.
You can really tell, especially with A New Hope, but also with Empire, like, these movies were cut to the bone.
Oh, yeah, these things are, like...
And, like, the original cut of A New Hope doesn't even have the fucking Jabba the Hutt scene in it, because you don't need it.
Yeah.
And... Yeah. I cherish that approach, and I think if that had been done with this movie, I think this movie would be at least 25% better.
Yeah.
Probably still not perfect, but...
I agree. I think it would be... I think I would, as an entertainment level, it would be on the same level as The Force Awakens for me.
But, like, you know, as it is, there's so much I want to like about this movie.
I know.
There's so much that I, like, appreciate in theory, but good God... It's just not executed well enough for me to like it. It's often a slog. There's so much of it is just not well done. Like Rian Johnson, he's getting his own Star Wars trilogy.
Oh no!
I am at least kind of curious about what that is going to be. Like, maybe he'll have, like, free reign in that.
Well, here's the thing about, like, I don't think... I mean, like, as much as, like, we're blaming J.J. Abrams, and he deserves a lot of blame.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't think, even if, like, Rian Johnson was allowed, okay, from the ground up, what's your Star Wars, I still don't think I think it'd still be nonsense, because corporate notes would come in and say, like, that's not the brand.
Right.
That's
well,
not
no,
the
like,
brand.
I said this. I think I have come to accept that there will never again be a transcendent Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And honestly... I think The Last Jedi is as good as it's going to get. Like, and quite frankly, I don't know, because maybe when I actually watch Rian Johnson's movies, I'll understand. But this is kind of why I wanted to watch Rian Johnson's movies before I saw this movie.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
so like they get like a sense of him as like a filmic presence.
And unfortunately, that just didn't end up happening. But I will watch them and report back in an effort to determine, like, how much of this was his fault and how much of this...
I've been willing to watch Looper with you.
And how much of this was his fault and how much of this was Disney's fault. Certainly, us being who we are inclined to blame it more on Disney. But, and I would certainly buy that. but I just don't know.
I think, I like to get back to this. I think the only person who could possibly save any of this is Spielberg, and he doesn't want to touch any of this with a 10-foot pole.
And like, J.J. Abrams is coming back for Episode 9,
which
I'll see, because
I think JJ is better at doing J.J. Abrams than Rian Johnson.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe he'll kill off. Maybe he'll kill off Star Wars.
My biggest, but here's my thing. My biggest fear, and this is why, like, in spite of everything, like, I am somewhat hesitant to criticize this movie, is because my greatest fear, is that Disney will, like, see the fan criticism, and J.J. Abrams will see the fan criticism and be like, okay, we have to give them what we want, and he's gonna undo all the steps forward that Rian Johnson took. My greatest fear is that J.J. Abrams, in Episode 9, will reveal, actually, Rey was a Skywalker all along! Like that...
Luke was lying to her! Why did he lie? Find out next time!
But, I mean, I say all this like I'm, like, worried about it, and I am, but, like...
You're too old for this shit.
I really just shouldn't care about this anymore.
Too old for this shit.
I should just take these two perfect movies that we have, and will have forever, and go off and be like, and tell everyone, watch these, and... like, watch Return of the Jedi if you need closure, but don't watch anything
Tyler,
else.
think of it this way. The best Superman movie is Superman Returns, and all that is being done with Superman right now is the DC machine. Just think of that. That's where I'm at with, like, my beloved childhood franchise.
Do you think Superman Returns is better than the originals?
Oh, I don't think it's really a worthwhile exercise to compare those. Oh, the original movies?
Yeah.
Well, I think Returns is a lot more ambitious. I think has a lot more interesting ideas, though. Okay. I think the original Superman movies are just like nice little nice problematic breezes that have a lot of nice imagery.
Because Daniel also loves Superman and he loves the Christopher Reeve movies.
I like them too.
But okay, I was just curious. So Reeve, you were going to make a point a long time ago.
Yeah, I thought we were going to talk about Snook. So I was going to start by saying that well, first off, he's completely useless, and he looks fucking weird. And then second of all, why does his chamber look eerily like Eyes Wide Shut?
I don't know.
Gee, I wonder why that is.
I don't.
Visual references in a Star Wars movie?
Can I just say, though, I do kind of appreciate, like, what Rian Johnson is doing with
there's a visual stuff. The visuals in this are routinely good.
Like, someone, I think that AV Club article pointed out that, he drew a lot from, like, kind of Kurosawa's later, like, color epics, like Kagemusha and, like, Ran. Yeah. So, I do kind of appreciate all that.
That's about it. And then there was also
I think it also be said that, like, Star Wars itself was ripping from Kurosawa.
Well,
and, like,
pretty much.
But he's pulling from a different era of Kurosawa.
Yeah.
Anyway, Reed, continue.
But again, going back to the beginning of this, I do like that silent cut, and I will cherish that. And that's all I really have about this movie to care about.
Tyler, I have no problem burying this movie and shit, because, like, I think, like, all its problems do come from the fact that, like, all its interesting ideas don't go anywhere. And, like, if you had done something different, you would have a much better movie. Like, because I don't think the problem with this movie is, like, it does new weird things and fails. My problem is that it does new weird things and doesn't do anything with them.
That's what we're saying. We are on the record as, like, everyone who is criticizing this movie is criticizing it for the wrong reasons.
Yes, that's my that's my notion as well.
That's our verdict on The Last Jedi, and is that all we have to say?
I hate it so much. I hate it.
I don't hate it.
Actually, I have one thing.
Yes.
So I've been in a lot of, like, academic setting where, like, you submit a work and then it goes, like, through a fucking wood chipper. Why couldn't these scripts go through a similar process?
Because that's not how studios operate.
No, like, look, man, like, these people are not looking for, like, structure. They are looking for, like, brand recognition. They have the optics you find in an academic setting are the optics these people just do not care.
It is honestly shocking, like, how much, like,
just utter
corporate notes, like, miss, like, basic storytelling problems.
Oh yeah, well, there's like a certain ineptitude to these things that is, like, utterly shocking. Like, the editing can be shockingly bad sometimes in The Last Jedi. Like,
there are a lot of moments. Did you notice this? There are a lot of moments where, like, a line will just be kind of like tossed off and like kind of quiet.
Yeah, yes.
For some reason.
I think there's also like a notion in this movie. This is a visual thing so much, which I think is like why like and this is more filmic than like corporate wise, but like they don't understand the eyeline cut. Like there's a certain part of this movie where like Rey and Luke are talking, and like what you would have is like you put like Rey in like one hand of the part of the frame and Luke in the other part of the frame to insinuate they're talking to each other, and they fuck that up. They're both in like a weird part of the frame. Like most of it is like taken up by the background. They're just kind of like there in the front corner.
Yeah,
and it's just weird and off-putting and stop. And like these things, I think like the blockbuster is disintegrating before our eyes insofar as like technical
it's so
works
strange.
are concerned.
It's so very strange.
And like I just don't know why it's allowed to happen.
Yeah,
we are dancing madly on the lip of the volcano as it comes to blockbusters. Disney just bought Fox. Everything's gonna be a monopoly soon enough. We're fucked.
I'm just waiting for it all to implode.
I don't know what would make it implode. Because like Justice League Justice League and like these DC movies should in theory be like wow, we need to change the blockbuster. But what has actually happened is like, oh hey, Disney's doing it better, which is really worrying. So like they figured out something.
In conclusion, I don't know how often I'm gonna rewatch The Last Jedi. Probably like
never.
Not.
Probably never.
But
unless like we do like this like whole like song and dance again when there's like 16 more movies.
I don't think we will. It's not gonna be worth the trouble.
Yeah.
Solo, a Star Wars story is coming. I think that movie is gonna be like
awful,
horrendous.
It's gonna be awful.
Yeah.
And but I will say, I'd rather watch The Last Jedi like 5 more times than watch Rogue One more time.
That's
so.
true.
It's got that going.
I haven't seen Rogue One, and I never will.
Just don't.
I haven't seen Rogue. I think I've only seen it once, and
I'm sorry.
I mean, I know someone who's like seen it multiple times.
Well, they can go fuck themselves, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Anyway, in actual conclusion, The Last Jedi is only 5 minutes shorter than Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights.
Think of that.
Boogie Nights is so much more worth your 2.5 hours than The Last Jedi is. Please.
That movie makes time feel like it's like an hour and a half, not 2.5 hours.
Just please.
That movie has like thematic depth and ideas. It goes
Do yourself a favor and go watch Boogie Nights.
It was I think it was my favorite movie of Volume 1.
Yes, it was.
And I
recall that.
Yeah, that movie's a masterpiece, and everyone should go see it. So instead of trekking out to the theater,
Life and Death of Colonel Blimp is only 10 minutes longer. Watch that shit.
Yeah, watch that shit. I heartily agree for that.
Improve your life. Jesus Christ. Okay, so that's all we have to say about this. Our next episode will be Christmas themed. Hopefully, kind of. Hopefully we'll have more good things to say.
Okay, so
we're continuing our theme from last year of movies set at Christmas that aren't necessarily particularly Christmassy.
Yes.
We're going to be watching a 1960 noir film called Blast of Silence.
Perfectly fine by me.
And
1960?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you said 1916. I'm like, wait a minute.
It was kind of in an amoebic form at that form.
And then we are also going to watch Stanley Kubrick's final film, Eyes Wide Shut. Which my dad wants to watch with me, so we'll see how that goes.
No.
He's insistent, Reed. He's like, don't watch it without me. I've wanted to see that movie for a long time. I'm like, okay, Dad.
Watch before him and then watch it with him.
Okay, Dad.
Oh, man. I don't know if I could sit through that movie twice.
What movie?
Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh, yeah, you're on your own, Reed. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Anyway. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I hope there's like some like interesting to listen to.
I hope there's some like ideological through line that like one can find by picking everything apart.
Yeah. I may split this into 2 parts. We'll see how this goes.
Just old and new back to
back.
Well,
we might like maybe old and new. Maybe I'll like separate our Last Jedi review into its own thing.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time. And God is dead. Well, God has been dead for a long time.
That's also
just
true.
just watch Empire like 6 more times. I implore you.
I about agree with that.
Yeah.
Those movies have charm.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're done here.
Bye.
I'm happy with myself because that was way less toxic than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I thought I would just come out here like foaming at the mouth and like just like through like rum and spittle, I would be like screaming my criticisms.
God.
We've all come to terms with these things. All right. Goodbye, everyone.